Right. Well, I'll get cracking. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My name's Duncan Davies. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Notify Technology. Delighted to be here with Mike O'Hara from Grafton Group plc, who is on my other side of the table. That's Mike. I'll let him introduce himself in a moment. And Richard Byrne from Travis Perkins, just behind me. You'll see we're well socially distanced for obvious reasons. So we are despite looking close together, quite some way apart. I'm gonna compare today, interview, however you want to describe it. And the idea of today's webinar is to talk about collaboration and creating a safer workplace. We are live, so if anything goes wrong with the technology, then please do bear with us. To give you a quick introduction to Travis Perkins and Grafton, between them they employ well over 30,000 people across the UK, Ireland, the Netherlands, and very recently for Grafton, Finland, across several thousand sites. So two huge employers, FTSE 250 businesses in the UK. They have, I guess, ridden a little bit of a wave over the last 18 months where many of us decided that during lockdown we would do DIY and make changes to our houses. So have both had, from a trading perspective, very encouraging results. Obviously, though, have, like everybody else, had to deal with COVID, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think we're also conscious that COVID's quite a well-done topic. So the big theme for today is collaboration and how that can make workforces safer. So I'm going to ask the chaps to introduce themselves. We've got about 40 minutes, 30, 40 minutes. We'll do our conversation. And then, as Alan's already talked about, we'll do a Q&A at the end. So if you can post your questions into the chat, Alan will pick those up, and we'll cover as many as we can in the time available, but we'll finish promptly for 11 o'clock, make sure everybody can get back. Some of you perhaps to your despair at the unfortunate England result last night, but what a great team performance, and I think hopefully you'll agree they did us proud. Quick pitch for Notify. We're a technology company, delighted to have Grafton and TP as clients. Our mission is to make 1 billion workers safer across the world, and to do that we build technology that is simple, smart and secure. This is not about Notify today, this is about collaboration, about Mike and Richard having a conversation. So with that, I will ask Mike, if you wouldn't mind giving the audience a little introduction and a bio of Mike O'Hara.
Thank you very much, Duncan. So morning everyone, Mike O'Hara. Looking forward to catching up with Richard. We have sort of known each other for a while, which is good. We've worked together from a distance for quite some time. Just quickly about me, I chose a career in environmental health, safety and those aspects quite early on. I did a specialist degree in that area and started my career as an enforcement officer, which, to be perfectly honest, I didn't really enjoy. It wasn't me. I learned quite early on that although consequences are important and there's a need for consequences in everything in life, actually long-term effective changes in behaviour are achieved better through collaboration, through working with people, through influencing. So after 4 years, excellent, very, very useful experience as an enforcement officer, I jumped ship. I never know whether it's gamekeeper turned poacher or poacher turned gamekeeper. And I worked for Scottish and Newcastle for several years as an environmental health and safety advisor, and ultimately the team manager, head of safety there. And then I moved through various roles, which again I think is important for safety professionals to know that your skills are transferable. Yep. So I moved from effectively brewing, pub retailing, centre parks at the time as part of that. And moved through roles with ATS Euromaster, which was part of Michelin, through Travis Perkins myself, and ultimately now as the Safety, Health and Environment Director for Grafton Group. And effectively the main driver through all of that was to help people keep safe. It sounds twee to some,
Yeah.
but it really is about influencing people, influencing leaders, and making safety just one of the many things that businesses manage on a daily basis.
Excellent. And what was your degree in, Mike? What specialist degree?
My degree was in environmental health.
Oh, okay.
And safety.
Okay. Did that help you? Like, was that a proper degree that was useful in the real world?
It was more of a vocational degree.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
With English and psychology, it was of no use to me in the real world.
This is evident, but you're doing okay so far.
You are an accountant, Duncan, so I don't know how
that was. We agreed that was a secret. So, thank you, Richard. So, Richard, same thing, please. Just introduce yourself. Talk a bit about your background and career.
Sure. Morning, everyone. Richard Byrne. I got into safety really, or got excited by the subject as a 13-year-old, believe it or not. I had a Saturday job in a garage, family-run outfit, middle of nowhere, and I remember quite clearly one day I was making the tea, as sort of juniors do, or did then, and I turned round, and over there I saw this maroon Ford Escort on fire. So it was on a ramp. One of my colleagues, sort of the next apprentice up, if you like, was welding it. Should have had me fire watching, but we were in a bit of a rush that day. So didn't. Me being the helpful teenager said, I think you got a bit of a fire there, and watched in amazement as he screamed, shouted, then eventually lowered the car down and tried to blow the flames out like they were candles on a birthday cake. And I thought, not in these words, but I thought, what makes someone behave like that when they're trained and competent in the face of danger? Fast forward however many years, bit like my degree in safety, a specialist degree, but not in environmental health and safety, just in pure safety management and economics. And, you know, got into safety. I think, to Mike's point, the thing I really like about it, one of the things that got me even more excited was the ability to move between industries.
Right.
And I've been really lucky to be able to do that as well. I would have, I think, certainly at a leadership level, there's probably only 20% of my time is taken up with technical skills. The rest is influencing. But I don't think you can shortcut cutting your teeth. You've really got to learn your trade, I think.
Yeah, I think the technical foundation's important all the way through. So for me, that was the enforcement side. I really had to know.
Yeah.
So you don't take a decision lightly to prosecute somebody or serve notices. So you have to cut your teeth and know that side. But as you progress through the business, then obviously it is much more about influencing skills and leadership skills.
Right. Yeah.
And I think sometimes I certainly see that people try and shortcut that immediate jump. So I remember back in the day when I was at the co-op as a safety officer, I would be the one filling out the F2508 for HSE in those days and, you know, doing all the reporting. And I think unless you really know that, you miss out a really important building block.
Right. And what kind of routes are available to people to do that? Is that you just start at the bottom rung and there is no kind of, you don't come in above that, you need to cut your teeth somewhere and learn the trade?
You can join at any level. I think there's brilliant apprenticeships now available to do that. I think there's lots of options.
It's just important to make sure, in my opinion, it's important to just make sure you get involved and you do physically do as you work your way through, so that you've got a handle on the legislation, you've got a handle on the reality of what happens out in the workplace. Okay,
great, interesting. So I guess, so we know a bit more about you. Richard, are you a published author? I think I've seen your book on Amazon.
Next question. I don't talk about that. It's just something I did once upon a time.
What did make you, what was the driver for that? Was it a kind of, because I know you evangelize about safety and particularly behavioural safety and stuff like that. What was behind that? Because you've got one or two books? I can't remember.
Two.
So,
well, look, the main drive for the one that you're referring to was out of frustration, really, with the safety profession in general. That, as Mike's talked about it, about coming in with a qualification and telling you what to do. That's not really how you get stuff done. You have to know the technical bit, but how do you influence? How do you write a business case? How do you play? How do you play things out properly so that you get the right result to keep people safe? And for me at the time, and I think it's still missing now, those really important pieces are missing from any safety qualification that I've ever come across. Anyway.
Right.
Which is why actually I think something like an apprenticeship is quite helpful, because you do get involved in the breadth of stuff.
Right. And you guys do apprenticeships, and there's a lot of apprenticeships at TP and Grafton. So, and not just in safety, but in all sorts of things. Yeah.
In other areas, maybe.
It's a big trend, isn't it?
But we equally look to develop internally, so we will always look to develop people from within the business into a safety role.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, let's bring it to today. I guess we're a week away from the end of lockdown, the end of restrictions. We are very COVID secure in here. So let's, without making it entirely about COVID, but let's talk about the kind of next week and then beyond that in terms of your approaches to unwinding the rules. And we're obviously into what Boris is calling personal responsibility, whatever that might mean. So what's your take on that, Mike?
Well, I think, first of all, we're both in industries that have been fortunate enough to be busy during the pandemic period. And that has presented its own challenges, obviously, as well. So I think, certainly I'm very proud of the approach Grafton took from the off, where we closed businesses, even though we were classed as essential. We felt it's the right thing to do to reassure colleagues, whilst we did everything we could to make them COVID safe. In terms of, as we start to ease the restrictions, I think there's certainly an intention to keep screens. There's an intention to keep all the good practices we've developed in terms of personal hygiene, of sanitising, etc., etc. So I think that's probably here to stay, because COVID's here to stay at the end of the day. It's not going away, is it? No. So I think that's here to stay. So we need to be sensible and pragmatic about how we move forward with those and keep the things that are good to keep. And I think the big bone of contention and discussion is going to be the face coverings. Right. Which, from our perspective, I think if once the government makes a stand about the legislative angle from that, then it's quite difficult for an employer in many situations to go against that. So I think from our perspective, it actually comes full circle to what both of us have just said. We need to get to the heart of why people do the right thing. So a good analogy for me would be, would I believe I would ever get into a car and drive a car without putting my seatbelt on in that car? And the simple answer is no, I wouldn't. And I don't care whether there's a legal requirement for me to do that or not. I understand the benefits of wearing a seatbelt in a car, and I choose to wear a seatbelt in a car. And not only that, I wouldn't allow anybody in the back of my car to not wear a seatbelt, because I believe fundamentally it's the right thing to do. So I think we need to think about how we apply some of that logic to things like face coverings. So I think we need to respect people who choose to wear a face covering, because they could have any unknown reason why they choose to do that. And we need to continue being sensible and potentially wearing face coverings in any crowded areas, etc. I certainly intend to. Right. So I think we need to be pragmatic, whilst at the same time starting to recognise life gets back to normal, whatever normal is.
Yeah. And where do you see where's normal?
Just said.
What
I just said. No, absolutely. It is here to stay. In effect, it becomes another health and safety risk that we all have to manage.
Yeah.
There'll be guidance sitting around that, but ultimately, it's about influencing people to do the right thing, isn't it? Take it to a different example. In our world that we both experience, we deliver products from our branches to our customer sites. We train our people; they know what they should do, and we hope that they follow that training when they're on the delivery side. But if they don't, what can we do? And it's that same sort of mentality. It just becomes another health and safety risk that we need to manage in that sort of way. So it's about really getting the why right, making sure the rules are really simple. And actually, if you can get it so that the majority of people agree with you when you're developing those rules, I think that's the key to success.
I agree. Don't forget the why.
Don't forget the why.
Don't forget the why.
Okay.
It's imperative.
And what about this issue of personal responsibility and what you decide to do? Because you've obviously got stores and you've got members of the public coming into your people's workplaces. So how do you think you're going to tackle that? Because it's a bit ambiguous, right? I mean, I might decide I'm deciding I don't want to wear a face mask or worry about COVID.
And equally, you've got to get the risk in perspective, haven't you? So I think the balance of risk is starting to move post-vaccination. We would, I think, still look to keep screens for some time to come. We would look to provide reassurance to colleagues. And I think the most important thing all of us can do is demonstrate to colleagues and customers, if need be, our support of them choosing to do whatever they choose to do. So if we have customers that maybe choose to wear a mask when they visit our stores and our branches, then that's absolutely excellent. We totally support it. Likewise with colleagues, if they have family relatives who are either vulnerable or maybe they're waiting for a hospital appointment or an operation, then again, they're going to make their own risk assessment of what they choose to do. And I think we need to make sure we go out of our way to respect those individuals and encourage them, encourage people to do the right thing for the right reasons.
Right. Okay. And what about the sector that you're in, and how did that respond to COVID? You know, were you kind of all, you know, crikey, what are we going to do now? Was everybody off in their own business doing their own thing, or did people come together? What was the kind of attitude in builders merchants?
Well, there was so we were fortunate in that we were classed as essential, because construction is essential. You can't build much if you haven't got building materials, and you get building materials from us. So, and for those on the call that were, you know, you might remember that there was a period between the first sort of announcement of lockdown and when COVID secure guidance came out. There was a period of about a month, if not a bit more, when there was nothing. So, thrust into the limelight, that would be for sure. We had to sort of pull on your occupational health and hygiene risk management stuff, you know, knowledge. You really needed that and a bit of pragmatism. But I think we came together pretty well, actually. So we worked with our trade body. You know, it wasn't just... absolutely. So it wasn't just the big nationals like Grafton or Travis that you said, oh, we'll look after ourselves. Thank you very much. We absolutely work with our trade body because we have lots of small independents in our space that, you know, don't have people like me and Mike and our teams to help them. So we thought that was incumbent on us as industry leaders to help and to collaborate. And
I also think the learning from here as well was, obviously this will vary by the culture and maturity, safety maturity, if you like, of the business. But I think presented with the pandemic we had, I think the majority of operational leaders got it.
Right.
You know, they got what this was. They got the dire impact on their business. They got the need for risk assessment. They got the need for controls to be put in place. So the why, if you like, was clearly evident. And I think that's something that we need to continue to remind ourselves of and remind them of in the future moving forward.
And where were, you know, in an organisation the size of Grafton or Travis, you know, where did you find yourselves as the safety leaders at the beginning? Because I kind of envisaged that there was a kind of long stream of people at your doors going, oh my God, what the hell do we do now? Because this is all about safety. Or was that not how it...
I think that's going to vary so much by business. I think we're a collection of very independent businesses who manage this themselves very, very well. So that from the group central position, if you like, it was more just coordination. It was making sure that we learned from each other as much as anything, because we had some businesses that were more retail focused, that were open for longer, or they weren't more click and collect type operations. So we learned a lot from them as opposed to the ones that were more trade, that maybe we could be much more focused on the safe deliveries rather than collect. So we learned from each other. They were very, very reactive themselves.
Right.
So from my point of view, it was just keeping everything moving, and when they needed a degree of reassurance. I don't know whether you found that. They made the decisions, but sometimes they just want to know that actually from a safety professional's perspective, it felt like the right thing to do.
I mean, we were slightly different from a devolved model that Mike just talked about. It was very much as a group, how do we respond to this? So we did have some very clear sort of guidance around that, but you know, to the bit that Mike just mentioned there about assurance, absolutely. People wanted that for obvious reasons. So I remember, and I was super proud of this, our safety advisor team, because they visited every one of our 1,800 locations in about a 4-month period. Never been done before in the history of TP, but they visited it visited all of them, and they just did a very focused COVID secure assessment audit, but it wasn't really an audit, although they ended up with a list of actions if there was stuff missing. Review, that would be a better one. Yeah. But the fact that our branch managers and our yard colleagues and warehouse colleagues were just saying, I'm glad we've got it right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that level of assurance is really needed. Likewise, our exec committee and our board wanted, are we doing the right things? And so we sought that assurance elsewhere.
And I think building on that as well, maybe the different models, the safety teams were there doing that, but actually what was equally powerful was when the regional directors and the exec team, they were out visiting branches as well.
Right.
It's important, otherwise their ivory tower concept, which just didn't apply. So I think actually the leadership team being out and about showed demonstrably how important the safety of everybody, everybody's safety was in that work environment, and they were prepared to go there to help.
Well, it just shows good leadership, doesn't it?
Yeah, really. And that's interesting, isn't it? That actually you're the kind of conduits for the health and safety, and like you say, that this is the technical stuff we need to be following, but actually it's still back to leadership. It's still back to influencing and collaboration and bringing people with you.
Absolutely, and I think if anything, I like to think about what I do is I achieve through other people. I don't achieve directly myself, if you like, through that. Obviously, there are some things I hopefully do, but a lot of what we do in practice is hopefully achieved through other people behaving the way we want them to.
Yeah. I remember my very first boss at the co-op actually said he manages safety through other people, and I think he's absolutely right.
Right. Okay, well, that brings us very neatly to our main topic then. Let's talk about collaboration. So I guess hopefully no one on the call is unaware of the fact that Grafton and TP are competitors. So what brings two safety leaders from two big competitors together in a webinar in the same room, albeit in Grafton's room? What's about collaboration that makes it important for you two to be here today and joining us at this webinar?
Because the safety of people isn't competitive, or shouldn't be competitive to that degree. It really shouldn't. So I know we've joked, I think we've both done this, but we talk about networking, we talk about safety professionals networking and collaborating. Well, actually, sometimes nothing beats just making a phone call or sending a message on LinkedIn. Picking someone in your same business sector or a similar business sector, or equally something completely diverse, and introduce yourself. That's what I've done throughout my career, and I think Richard's done the same. Because that can then lead to effective collaboration just informally. It's another sounding board. It's another professional that you can share ideas with and learn from.
I agree. It's just about people. Yes, we are fierce rivals, I think, in the marketplace, but ultimately it is just about people. And let's be brutally honest, Mike might have some people currently working for him that might come and work for us in a couple of months, and likewise we'll have some people that will go and work for Mike. So it makes a lot of sense to work together on some of this stuff we do.
We also share drivers, we share yard staff, we share branch managers, not openly, but obviously the workforce movement in the business.
And that's a bit of a feature of this sector, and you're two of the biggest players, so it's bound to be.
But don't think it doesn't happen in other, if you take the logistics sector, people will move between distribution centres and logistics firms, they'll move between couriers, move between retail locations as well. So I think it happens on all bit, but I think, Mike, your point's really well made. So whenever I talk to colleagues about, how are you going to network, collaborate? Oh, I'm going to go to this meeting, I'm going to do that. The easiest way, and probably, and even more so with COVID, is just as you've said, pick up the phone, get in touch via LinkedIn, or have a. Some of the best learning I've ever had is been going to an organisation that has got absolutely nothing to do with what I do. Because it's a completely different view on any subject, and as long as it's, I see success as I've spoke to Mike and it sparks an idea. That's success. It sparks an idea, and we go. But we don't do it enough, even though we've known each other from a distance for a few years. We don't do it enough. So thank you, Duncan, for bringing us together.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. That's
I hope it's everyone else's pleasure.
I'm sure it will be. And so on on the networking and how do, if we've got people in the audience who are kind of newish in their career, then what kind of, it might be difficult to pick up the phone. Have you got any stories about where you've done that, or people that you've learned from that have been useful conversations? And does that sit in isolation to like going to an IOSH webinar? Are they doing different things, those two things?
I think there's well, you've always got the option of whether it's CPD events or whether it's conferences, what have you. You've got an audience ready made for you there to network with, should you wish. Yeah. But if I'm honest, when I look back, probably the best learnings I've made and relationships I've been made are either ones where I've just made the effort myself. Yeah. And to be honest, I'm old enough to remember that you couldn't always Google everything. You couldn't always just go onto Google and think, you know what, I'm going to try and find the safety director's name in this company. But okay, don't.
Even I remember that.
I used to send memos. Don't worry. I remember those.
But back in the day, you had to find different ways, and very often that was relationship led, that was people led. So I've made a lot of contacts through the leaders of the businesses where I've worked too. So whether it's your managing director, your ops director, they will have contacts in other businesses, and they will have worked in other business sectors as well a lot of the time. So, so you just need to use everything that is available to you, really, in terms of networking.
And push yourself forward a bit would be my advice. I still do it now. So, I quite happily approach a business leader or whatever and say, oh, can you help? I've got a call actually this week with somebody where I've set that up myself because I want to know about something else. And likewise for other people on the call. I think in general, most safety leaders are reasonably well networked and they can't wait to help.
Yeah.
So, just put your hand up.
Yeah. We've definitely had people coming to us to look at our software who've said, I spoke to Richard Byrne and he said, we should come and talk to you. And they are clearly...
Really?
Yeah. Wow. Two or three times. But they've obviously, the fact is they've obviously reached out to you and said, look, can you tell me about where do I go for some safety software or what do I do about this? And that seems...
I've not got to that recommendation point yet.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
But I think that's a good point, actually, because I do think suppliers to the safety sector could play a bigger part in this. Not just you guys, but others, I don't know, people that provide forklift truck training, as an example. But they touch lots and lots of different sectors, so there is an opportunity to a bit different to bring people together.
Yeah. Okay. Right, we're going to talk, I think, about the future. We can bring in collaboration. We're going to talk a bit about the future. So stuff that's coming up, I guess, I was going to call it sexy. That's probably not a great word for a webinar, but things that you see in the next 6, 12 months. Richard, do you want to start on that? The things that the future holds, stuff that you're looking at from a safety perspective at TP?
Really good question, because you have to get your head out of COVID and the day job, don't you, to do that. And I think it's important that we do, all of us, it doesn't matter what role you're working in safety or anywhere, actually, businesses, that you do take the time to stop and step back and just see where you're going. So when I do that, I can see us using a bit more wearable technology, virtual reality for training, and data lakes. I know. I thought it'd get you excited when I mentioned data lakes, but wearable tech. One of our businesses has done an amazing job with an organisation. Effectively, it's a little box thing that they put on their person somewhere on their belt,
right,
and it flags up when they're doing high risk body movements. And if you keep doing them over time, the theory is it affects your, you're more likely to have a manual handling injury. And it's amazing how technology can help you to do that. So all of a sudden, that business is moving far away from back straight bend your knees training to, perhaps we need to reorganise how we do this job in order to prevent injury, and you get efficiency, which is really interesting. And data lakes. So for my sins, as well as safety, I also look after fleet for Travis Perkins, and one of the largest commercial fleets in the UK. And I am amazed how much data we've got on our vehicles. So all that data sits in a big data lake,
right,
not quite sure what a data lake looks like, but I'm told we've got one. But you know, all of a sudden now we can start taking information about vehicle checks, about speeding, about tacho infringements, about the number of collisions people have, and we can put that together to create a risk profile to say this driver might need a bit more help, or this branch needs a bit of help to manage this bit. That enables you to be far more proactive, I think. So
and that's the key. Your last bit there is the key with that, because I think when I look back through businesses over time, lots of businesses have had that data for a long time.
Right.
You know, vehicle telemetry has been around for donkey's years. The big question I find a lot of times is how much are we using it? How much use are we actually getting from that data?
Right.
And you can apply the same to our own incident and lost time and injury type data as well. So it's all very well complying with the law, reporting, keeping your own license or whatever it is you're actually trying to achieve. But there's a massive amount of data on there that we possibly don't tap into enough. And I think you're right. Sexy was the wrong word. But I think in terms of things for the future, I do believe, certainly from our angle as well, that the health and the well-being angle as opposed to safety. You know, it's been health and safety for a very, very long time, but the reality for most of it is it's been safety, and a little bit of health. And I think it really is time for that health to come to the forefront. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of good stuff, whether it's mental health, first aid, whatever. That's all good stuff. But to me, actually, a lot of it comes back right full circle to what we said before. I think it's not about paying lip service to things. It's about companies and businesses and owners and ops directors and managing directors and the leaders in the businesses physically demonstrating to their colleagues that they're not just words. And I think mental health and well-being is a really tough nut to crack from an employer perspective. So it's not something that there's any magic wand or silver bullet for, but there's a lot of good stuff we're doing, whether it's everything from community engagement within individual businesses and locations, through to supporting individuals and just trying to create that open environment where people feel respected and trusted. There you go, I've used that word again. Coming back to respect.
And you talked a bit. Well, we've talked about this. 20% of what you now need as leaders is about technical, and 80% is about influencing. What is there a shift that you've seen then in terms of how much well-being and mental health takes up of your day job versus what it did 5 or 10 years ago? You know, is it becoming a much bigger part of what you do? And
definitely, I think it's similar in a way to the whole sustainability or ESG agenda, isn't it?
Right.
If we go back in time, we had corporate social responsibility policies that ticked boxes and achieved compliance. I'm being cynical potentially in some cases, but certainly as we move towards genuine sustainability strategies and the whole wider gambit of that, and start looking internally at ourselves as well as collaborating with suppliers, upstream, downstream with customers, etc. That very much is taking over. It's changing a lot. Certainly at the leadership level in terms of the focus.
Right. Is that the same at TP?
I mean, look, if you really think about what well-being is, well-being's looking after your physical, mental, social, and financial fitness. Well, the key bit of physical fitness is making sure you don't have an accident at work. And if you're getting you back to a normal way of life as quick as you can. So actually, well-being becomes that wraparound, doesn't it? Becomes the wraparound of everything. And that plays to a whole load of things. And I think colleague engagement and the whole shaboodle. Yeah. And
are you seeing that? Are you seeing that coming in as kind of additional work that's coming into the safety team that that is a higher proportion than what you were doing 5 years ago as well?
Or? I think no, it's got to be more holistic than that for me. So it's got to be joined up across it. A lot of it is very HR led.
Right.
So it's got to be very much shared. And a holistic approach across the business.
I mean, this is is it too much of a stretch to say we're sort of we have a bit of a health or a well-being deficit in the workplace across the UK? not sure it is. I think that probably does describe the situation, particularly after COVID,
Right.
or during, what we've seen in the last 18 months. So, if we are going to affect a change in that space, that has to be beyond mental health first aiders, because that's all I hear about quite a lot. Brilliant role that they do, but in effect, it's the equivalent of a plaster. So they look after you until you can get some help to help, right? But how do we get to the bit before that, so that you don't have to have the metaphorical plaster? That's the challenging and interesting piece. And the point being, that's a massive agenda. So, a bit like trying to move a safety culture forward. It doesn't rest with me, it doesn't rest with Mike, or the safety mob. It has to rest with everybody.
Right. And are you closely aligned to your HR colleagues then in this? Is there a very close overlap?
So I very much on operations.
Yeah.
Right.
And so as an example, I am responsible for the group's wellbeing strategy, along with the group HR director. We agreed months ago now that there was loads of room for everyone to dance. Right, so we're not going to be stomping on each other's toes unless you see me dance, and then you think I would. But there's loads of space to play in. So let's not get precious. Let's just sort it out. And I think if you can have that grown-up relationship, it helps.
Yeah, because I think as a non-safety person, I would look at often the well-being, mental health side of things almost feels like you would go to HR if you felt a bit unhappy. And if you hurt your arm, you'd go to safety. And there seems to, there needs to be this bridging between those two functions, or putting them together.
The best bridge is hopefully what I think we've managed to achieve in a lot of our businesses do operate fairly autonomously. The individual businesses have just grasped it. They really have. So whether it's managing director, whether it's CEO, whether it's the ops team in those businesses, and that's fundamental. It's the same for safety. It's the same for that. They're the ones who can affect the change. So they're the ones that we've got to influence to get in that place. I think if you do the mental health and well-being, it's actually fairly tangible for a lot of them, because they know people who know people, they've had personal experiences themselves, and they get it. And I think once you get to that point, they're very, very powerful.
And just sort of two
of change.
Absolutely, and 2 points for me. One is to build on what Mike's just said. This is ultimately it's about line managers managing. So if you let's just talk very specifically about mental health. If I notice as a team member or as you manage, Duncan, you haven't been acting yourself for the last couple of weeks. Perhaps that's the opportunity to just have a conversation, because ultimately it's that's the line manager's job, to look after people and to help if they can. Mental health first aiders might sit around that to do that. The other thing, I think, back to the point about who owns wellbeing or who's responsible for it, and I've only learned this in senior leadership roles. Don't be precious about who owns what. Yeah, right. Agree where you want to get to, and then think how can I help? How can I add real value? What can I bring to the party? Put me in the team coach kind of approach, rather than that's mine. Go away, not interested. And it's only, I don't know about you, Mike, but I've only learned that in senior roles.
No. Right, that's interesting, and because you're basically all about influencing. Back to that collaboration thing, you're at the top, if you like, but your success is determined by the people who are actually on the ground, the people delivering to you.
Well, everywhere. So my success, in my mind, and I guess yours too, Mike, is it's the success of the organisation. I don't make up the organisation. I'm part of the team, but I'm not the team.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and if it doesn't come from the bottom up, then you're never going to achieve long-term change. And likewise, if the bottom, if the bottom level of the organisation don't feel that there's a genuine belief at the top, then equally you're on a hiding to nothing.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the best things I learned, we actually did colleague true anonymous safety sort of engagement surveys with one of the businesses I worked in previously. And one of the real, I think, nuggets for me from there was basically expect, if you're going to try and go through some cultural change program, because you need to, effectively expect the team not to believe that you believe.
Right.
bit double negative maybe in there, what have you. But I think expecting them not to believe that you believe, especially if they've come through a culture where they've been ignored.
Right.
You know, if someone has a problem and they've raised it and they're ignored, they may only raise it one more time again, possibly two. And then the system's set for them. Really.
Right.
So
I think the other bit is to be really honest, and it goes back to relationships. So I can see you on the call, Andy Dunbar, one of your colleagues.
Hello, Andy.
There you go, Andy. Hello. I remember Andy came to pitch the Notify system. I know it's not a dig for a sales pitch for Notify, but Andy came to pitch the system to us. We'd had lots of different people talking to us about the system, about what they could sell, blah, blah, blah. Andy rocked up. His opening line was, I know nothing, this was a long time ago, by the way, I know nothing about safety, but I know loads about tech, and I want to work with you to put the two together. And I thought, oh, I like that. That's different. That really works. And, you know, I, to Mike's point, take that approach as we do in Travis, and my personal view is this is the way to, this is my sort of MO, if you like. Frontline colleagues know what the issues are. They know how to resolve stuff. So our job as leaders is to sit there with big flappy ears and listen and find ways to help them.
Yeah, brilliant. I really like that. Right, we're going to be, I think, coming towards the end. So I want to kind of round off neatly,
Okay.
if we could, chaps. So just some kind of final. Let's summarise some of the points that we've made today. Perhaps start with you, Mike, on some messages for our folks on Zoom to take away from today. What would be the key things?
Well, I'm going to use a word first because I've used it several times today, and that's respect. I think the word respect is extremely powerful. It works both ways. We've talked about it in COVID. I think we need to learn tolerance and respect for other individuals, and we need to sort of apply that outside COVID into other areas of our work activity as well. I think that's a very useful word for safety development.
Brilliant. So respect, yeah. Richard?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, Mike, with respect. It's, and actually it links to the point I'm going to talk, I think, is around, I mean, this is called collaboration this session, but another read of it is networking.
Yep.
Now, Mike works for the competition. We will have a bit of a laugh and a joke about the fact that he works for Grafton, I work for TP, but ultimately there's deep respect there for each other professionally, because we otherwise why network and collaborate with someone that you don't respect?
Yep.
So I think going forward, one of the things that I have learned through COVID is that it is a very small world, and most people are really keen to help you if you pick up the phone. So pick up the phone. Don't sit there in isolation. There's loads of people out there that will help. So I definitely think something around networking is important.
Brilliant. I think the two of you can expect some phone calls after today from our audience. Mike, have you got any more?
I think the final one for me, again, and it's a COVID learning, but I think it's something that I think we can all take forward. And that's that during COVID, I think businesses have generally, certainly businesses that have had to operate through COVID, have demonstrated a real aptitude for understanding risk assessment and understanding the need for risk assessment and the balance of reasonably practicableness, if there is such a word. I'm happy I've made it up if there isn't. But I think that balance of reasonably practicable, I think, it's always quite a difficult concept to get across, certainly when you're trying to convince leaders of the need to change or do something differently. And I think COVID has been a very useful demonstration of that in practice, because this is a very tangible why. We've talked about why. There's a really tangible why that it's important to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that whereas some people sometimes struggle with the process of risk assessment and the identification of the control measures and the hierarchy of control steps, etc. Perfect. COVID's just a living example, I think, for every safety professional to do you agree?
No, I do. I think if we can explain the why better as a profession, life becomes a lot easier. So we had a really compelling why with COVID. So the conversation about, well, why are we doing this didn't happen.
Yeah. Right.
I was talking to a colleague in a completely different industry the the other week, and we were and she was talking about how much PPE had cost her organisation, and she didn't know. And she didn't know because the conversation was not about how much it was.
Right. Yeah.
Just get the right stuff.
Get it sorted.
So, now listen, I only wish every business case was like that. It's never going to be. The point is, if we are really good at explaining the why, life becomes a lot easier, and I think that's a real important one.
Yeah, and I think there's a kickback on that as well, because not only have we got a good working example of how to put risk assessments into practice and keep a business open and trading, I think we've also got a personal challenge back to ourselves to be able to say, well, in future, how should we work differently with ops?
Right.
Because we've managed to achieve this during COVID, not ourselves. It's the operational teams that have achieved it. All we've done is facilitate it.
Yeah.
So I think the challenge back to us is, with every other problem we think we have, just think about how we tackled COVID. And we tackled COVID because we convinced the operational leaders that there was a real physical, tangible why. Yeah. And that's what we need to do with every problem that we have, is my take.
Agreed.
Excellent points. Excellent points. Well, thank you both. We are out of time, although we've got quite a few questions to get through. So I'll finish.
Hard, are they?
They're not hard. There's nothing to.
I'll answer what I can, and then we'll pass back to we'll pass between each other.
I will just round off by saying thank you very much, Mike and Richard. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you also to Grafton Group for the loan of this lovely boardroom. I think it's worth saying, I'm sure everyone understands this, Mike and Richard have both given their time absolutely for free, in the spirit of collaboration, I guess, without reusing that word. It's something they didn't have to do. I think this idea of helping people by talking about these topics is incredibly powerful. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Because they're not taking any cash for my sitting here interviewing them, Notify is going to make a donation to the National Forest, so that our driving to Birmingham today is carbon neutral. When the email comes out to the attendees, you'll see a link in there as well if you'd like to also donate to the National Forest. I'd encourage you to do so, and by way of your own thanks to Mike and Richard for giving up their time today. So thank you. That was the hard bit done. So thank you both for sticking with that. We're going to do some Q&A now. We've got about 15 minutes. So I'm going to quickly scan through. Let's start with an easy one. It's quite wide. From your experience, how would you engage management into influencing safety culture within the organisation? From your experience, how would you engage management into influencing safety culture? Mike.
How long have we got?
I think we're going to have to cut down some key learnings.
It's a long journey, I think, is probably the fair response to that. And again, it depends very much on where that business is on their own maturity curve. So if we assume there's a business that you feel as though you're banging your head against a brick wall and you don't feel the safety culture is there, let's take that as the starting point. Then I think you've got to, coming back to respect in a way, you've got to earn the respect of the leaders of that business. That's a good starting point. You've got to not be, so for example, I've worked in roles where my predecessor was maybe the policeman to enforce the law, or the emergency services to get them out of trouble when the proverbial hit the fan.
Yeah.
And if that's what the safety team's function is, then you've not got the right culture, obviously. So in terms of how to change that is to prove your worth to the business. And a starting point for that, for me, is understand the business. Get out there, understand what the real world of that business is. It's easy to have risk assessments that say people should do X, Y, and Z, but classic, we talked about delivery drivers. I've got every respect for every single delivery driver out there in the country, because they have to effectively do dynamic risk assessments every minute of the day.
Right.
And we can have whatever risk assessments and safe systems of work written down that we like, but we would do very, very well to get off our backsides and go and sit in their cab with them. You may have to wear a mask at the moment, but don't follow them in your car. go in the cab with them, spend the day with them, spend a week with a variety of them, and learn the problems those guys face. Now, how's that affecting the safety culture? Well, you're actually starting to get under the skin of and finding out what the real safety culture is, because the leaders will tell you what they think the safety culture is, but you need to actually go down to grassroots level, in my opinion, to feel and experience what the real safety culture is before you can then put a plan in place to actually change it.
Okay.
I agree. Well, you've got to get credibility. So the way you get credibility is going out and seeing what the business really does. Simple as.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good answer. I hope that's covered whoever asked it. I haven't got names for all of these chaps. I'm going to pick out some of these are comments, chaps, so you have to bear with me. But we can perhaps we can talk around them.
If they're favourable comments, I'm more than happy to hear them.
Mike's very good. No, it says safety at its heart is common sense. When businesses do you not think? Ooh,
don't like the word.
This is great.
Sense.
Okay.
Don't like the word
Can you speak up a little bit, Mike, just so I can catch you on the speaker?
No, it's a difficult one, isn't it? So
you didn't even let him finish the question.
I know. I think
common sense.
I think we should talk.
Is red rag to a bull for me.
Really?
Because my common sense, even though we may sort of work in similar businesses at this point in time, we've had different experiences in life. We have different perceptions of common sense. You know, if you think there is such a thing as common sense and you have children, then all I would say is have a look at some of the things your children do or want to do. Do you really believe common sense exists?
Okay.
Because I think you will very, very soon turn around and think, I'm sorry, actually, you know what? I can't leave something to rely on common sense. It just doesn't work.
That's what I mean. The one remarkable thing about common sense is it's not very common, right?
Absolutely. So if you want to carry on with the question, that's great. But I just thought I'd let you know where I stood.
That's quite clear.
I don't know that I will, but let me see.
Sorry about that.
A key issue is to pick up on hazard spots and near misses, as that is the right time to get it right. The Notify system can make reporting simple and instantaneous.
Did you write that?
That was trapping the data at source. That was not me or Andy.
Just on that, actually, if I can, and it plays to a bigger point, I think, that's happening across the safety profession at the moment, is that instead of always focusing on your LTIs or your riddles or whatever, is just trying to look at a level down. So as an example, in our business, we have something like 50,000 near misses reported a year. Brilliant, great, really happy. However,
so what?
Exactly. So what? Yeah, because I can't see the wood from the tree sometimes.
Yeah.
So we're just now trying to go, okay, so with all of these, which are the ones we're really worried about as safety professionals? Which ones do we get worried about? Well, stuff falling out of cranes would be the one that, or stuff fall, So that then means that incident becomes the one that we focus on, because we know from our experience that's where our next problem is going to be. So I think that just on that point, it is brilliant to drive a near-miss reporting culture, but so what?
Yeah.
And there's also got to be that qualification, I believe, that if anything becomes remotely incentivized in any way, shape or form, then you end up with ridiculous near misses being reported over and over again because someone somewhere has asked that a certain number of near misses are captured and reported.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a balance in there in terms of how much you learn from it.
And it never ceases to amaze me, because I'm sure there are lots of people on this call that sit there and go, that can't happen, surely. But I'm afraid.
Yeah, when I hear safety, because
in other organisations, it still does. Different places.
As an accountant and a tech CEO, you don't see a lot of unsafe stuff happening. Somebody might hit the wrong key on the keyboard. When I talk to safety professionals, you hear some of the extraordinarily, on the face of it, stupid things that people get up to.
But don't if there was something else in that? So you've used another word I don't like, which is stupid.
Yeah. Oh, slap my.
Because I get intensely irritated when people blame an accident as being someone made a stupid decision or did a stupid thing. Because actually, I would rather go into an investigation with an approach of it wasn't their fault.
Yeah.
I know that sounds really simplistic, because actually very often there will be a degree of fault attributed to them. But if we don't enter the investigation with that approach of it's not their fault, then I find personally you end up very quickly gravitating to the fact that they did something stupid. They made a stupid decision, didn't they? Whereas you're then closing off your sort of your avenues in your subconscious, if you like.
Yeah.
You're closing off the opportunity for you to really try and find out why they did that stupid thing.
Yeah.
Because there will be a reason why they did that stupid thing.
Because people don't go to
because
work.
they're stupid.
Yeah.
There will be something else that.
And there's a good model to help with that around just culture that just drive that to help you identify. Is it this more of the system that's wrong, or was there something for the individual? And generally, there's a bit of both.
Yeah.
So just culture or fair culture. Good Google.
Yes. Okay. Just culture, fair culture. I mean, that's what I've heard is, people don't go to work with the intention of getting hurt, right? So nobody goes to work in the morning thinking it would be funny if I had an accident.
And there's lots of different people. A lot of them are a lot more educated than me. Who have lots of different views and theories on exactly how that happens and why. But I quite often just prefer to keep it simple. Start with the viewpoint that it wasn't their fault. You'll come back round to the sum of that anyway, but start with that viewpoint. And then just try and think in terms of, well, actually, did this person make a mistake? Or did they deliberately go out of their way to do something wrong? And if you want to bring it back to football, did those 3 poor guys last night? They made a mistake. They're footballers under the pressure of that environment. God knows how many things were going through their mind. And I dread to think how they feel today. But that they are, again, they're experts in their field, as are our colleagues, our drivers, our branch staff. They're experts at what they do.
Yeah.
People will make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, there's some good banter now about common sense. So just for the sake of balance in our debate, we've got Colin. I think Colin Cox from Siemens. Common sense is not common, and what is common? So I think thank you, Colin. That's a wholehearted agreement. But the other comment, without a name I can see, can't agree with the dismissal of common sense that quickly, as we are not children at work. Can agree we all have different learning in life and perhaps a different approach to risk perception. So that's a...
No, I agree with that. No, I don't disagree, but it's just when you hear leaders in particular refer to the fact that we don't need to do X, Y, Z because it's just common sense.
And it's an incredibly powerful thing because that's just vocabulary, right? That's just almost neural processing of I hear those words and and what they mean is this.
What I mean is this.
But that's no different to saying, look, we need to get that out to the customer and so make sure that you drive safely, stay within the speed limits, but make sure that customer gets it before the end of the day. Sorry, what was the last thought you left with that driver?
Yeah.
Make sure you get, I need to fix the machine, right? I need it to be done safely. Don't want you to hurt yourself, but it's got to be ready for the night shift.
Right. Okay.
Wrong message.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And coming back on one of the other points, Colin again, but we employ a fair culture model to move away from blame of the individual. So I think that's what you just talked about there, Richard. Key area that they're looking at is advanced understanding of fatigue, which is a multifaceted issue. Have you guys got comments on fatigue and impact on safety?
I agree with you. To be fair, and I think COVID's proved that. I think certainly in our business, we have seen in some areas an increase in incidents, which, to be honest, 9 times out of 10, I can only put down to potential fatigue, maybe a lack of colleagues to some degree as well. It's a bit like a lot of businesses I've worked in, you tend to see a bit of a spike in incidents when it's peak holiday times.
Right.
And some of that can be either agency workers or staff who are less experienced or, dare I say, don't have the common sense of the everyday worker. I've said that's rather deliberate, Floyd.
Oh, right.
I didn't actually mean it.
You just chicken away.
But that would be the excuse that's rolled out.
Yeah.
And so sometimes a higher incidence during peak periods when you've got the workers who are not as experienced, and also maybe you've got less workers, so therefore fatigue becomes more of a factor for the ones left behind. Yeah. And I think we've seen a bit of that during COVID. Do you agree?
No, I do absolutely, and I bet lots of organisations have seen it as well. People are just worn out with tired. I think I don't know who what industry that the individual is that made that comment, but if you go to the safety critical industries in the theme of collaboration and networking, so if you were to talk to the CAA, the railway network rail we used to work for, they've done, and even the nuclear industry, they have done loads on fatigue, because ultimately if it goes wrong there,
the consequences are
catastrophic. So great example of networking is LinkedIn. Find out who's there and have a chat.
Yes, yeah, good. I can also plug a book called Why We Sleep. I don't know if you've read that. That's an amazing book, and a bit scary, by some scientist about what a lack of sleep does for you. It's quite, there's some quite scary graphs, which is why I now need my 8 hours a night. I try. I'm going to come.
That's just age.
I'm going to finish on because we're going to be 2 minutes. It's a little bit. Sandra, I think, made a really.
Read Claire's comment. Look, who says health and what was that? That was brilliant.
Who says health and safety professionals are?
Who says health and safety professionals are
not funny? Loving this webinar. Oh, thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Claire.
Glad someone is, Claire.
Somebody accused us of being funny, or you two of being funny. I want to finish on this last one, because Sandra, I feel common sense is not measurable, and we avoid using the term, and if it is not measurable, we'll struggle to support colleagues in doing the right thing. I love this idea of measurable, because not everything that matters can be measured, and not everything that you measure can be mattered. How do you guys see that in safety? Because there's so much you've talked about which is not measurable. You can't measure, or do you believe you can through leading indicators? This branch director, branch manager, regional director went and did a safety tool. Is that a good leading indicator? Where do you sit on measuring?
Depends on the quality of it, doesn't it? So ultimately, for me at least, when you talk about culture, shock horror, you can't measure culture. All you can ever do is measure the climate, the current moment in time. And the way you do that is people's beliefs and values about how you manage safety in the moment. It's a view of the stuff, the physical that you see when you're out there, and view of external stakeholders, and put it all together. So some of this, so how would you describe your aspiration? Where does your culture want to be? Well, everyone gets it. Everyone understands in the moment that matters how they act. Well, how do you measure that, really? Yeah. Really difficult. So, and that's why for me it's a balance between hard outcome measures and some softer measures, if you like, around culture. But it's quite difficult. Yeah. But we do need tangible, because tangible, every business does tangible.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike,
yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think it's
unusual.
No,
let's agree on a collaborative.
Today we'll agree on it. But no, I think. Again, it sounds pink and fluffy, which maybe isn't very PC, but it sounds a bit fluffy. But I do think there is a lot to the feel. You cannot measure the feel, right? And quite often, with experience, whether you're an experienced operator or whether you're an experienced safety professional, you can cut through very often the nonsense. Which is probably a better word than the one I was about to use. You can cut through the nonsense, and you can start to feel what the culture is like, right down to a branch level. Once you get engaged, come back to what we said before, work at grassroots level. You need to spend time talking to the people at grassroots level, because they're the ones who get injured. It's not the leaders that get injured at the end of the day. So they're the ones we need to protect.
I would love to carry on with that conversation, and we have even questions about it, but we are out of time. So we will call it a day. If folk are interested in running more of these, please reply to the email for feedback that you'll receive. But we are past 12 o'clock, so I'm going to call it a day. But thanks again, Mike and Richard. Really enjoyed that hour with you both, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.